I have a website that I launched on Squarespace, and I pretty much just picked the fonts that were with the theme. And as you said before, it's more than just the logo. So what fonts, what colors, what brand imagery represent this? Do I even worry about picking a font, or do I just ask you and you give me fonts and I just use them?
I could sit there and give you 2 great fonts, but at the end of the day, you're still sitting there with 2 great fonts. How are you going to actually treat them? What are you actually going to do with them?
Good question.
And then you're still left with pretty much the same thing you had before, just with 2 different fonts that I chose. So ideally, what you would want to do is actually engage a designer or a friend of yours to really work with you on the entire experience, all the way from what's your logo, small part, to what are these video blogs really looking like, feeling like.
Joey.
Yes. Are you going to ask me in front of everybody?
Do you need help moving or anything that I have that you need help with?
I need 7 goats.
How are some ways that you can spend as little time as possible? Because what I need from you, I can do the work, right? I'm the entrepreneur, but I just need your expertise. So how do we work together to where you do as little work as possible, but you provide the best outputs? How can I leverage your brain for the least amount of time possible?
You took a step in the right direction with the Pinterest mood board. That was very helpful. From there, it's almost like just conversations. We had a couple conversations around your logo, but didn't really explore that any further and how you apply that to your videos and how you apply that to anything else. I gave you very brief like, this looks great. We never really had deeper conversations than that. So I would say step 1 would be having deeper conversations than that. Is this really working for what you want it to be? How does that work with your blue background? These are all questions that I would have.
If I sent you a couple of font families that I thought represented all this, would you be able to not spend any more than a couple of minutes or if I take you to lunch and just talk through, okay, these fonts work for that, but here's how you're going to use them across everything and consider this?
Yeah. If you come with options, it would be easier for somebody like me to look at all the options and say, yeah, that's probably going to work better for what you're trying to accomplish. You want to choose your brand assets based off the brand experience you want to have, because that's what's going to be timeless for you, Brian J. Noel, not whatever's hot in 2015, unless you're planning to change it every year, which is also fine if that's the work you want to put into it.
All right, so that's fonts. So I assume same thing with colors. And what about colors are another thing that just, well, I don't like that color. Well, so how do you approach color? There's
a lot of theory for this, a lot of articles that go into how colors make certain people feel. We start there typically with blue is going to make somebody feel more trusting towards your brand. They're going to give you a little bit more loyalty. Red is going to be a little bit harsher. It still shows excitement and fun. It doesn't show, but it's a little more brash, and it makes people, and every color in the rainbow has that type of connotation with it. Of course, that's completely based off the user. Some people might feel completely different on red than what the theory suggests, but that's a good place. That's a good starting point. You want to base it off of how you want the experience to be. So if you want it to be nightlife and fun and bold, then you're probably not going to land on something like blue.
Right.
It's probably gonna be something a little bit more electric feeling, like where you were headed so far, something that's more lime green or something that really stands out for that late night feel. Your color palette is gonna be very broad, more than likely. Right. If I had to guess, it's gonna be very broad, and you're gonna have a very flexible palette where you can interchange colors for certain things. That's a big thing that people forget about, is that there is the option to have a flexible brand where in this season at this time you're using this specific color palette and that works, and next year you might use a different one. Fonts, colors, photography. How often do you see brands that have complete inconsistent photography? All the time. Is photography a piece of the brand? Photography is a very large piece of brand, mainly because it shows the people behind the brand itself. So it personalizes the brand. It personalizes the brand. It gives a face to a very non-personable thing, which is just this idea of branding. All around, it gives this sense of, I can relate with those people. Yes, I am a guy riding a horse. I don't know why.
With color and fonts, it's what's the tone of the brand, and how do you want your audience to feel, and then photography really helps with personalizing the brand. Who's involved? What kind of people are involved? What do they look like? What do they do? How are they represented beyond just the one format that you see on there?
Right. Photography becomes even more essential for personal brands because it shows the person behind that brand. So where many organizations have to rely on lifestyle-based photography where they're showing their product being used by a bunch of different people, personal brands have to show the person that they're trying to sell and their personality at the same time. So from what I've seen so far, you have a little bit of that going. I think a lot of what you can do is maybe make it higher quality photography.
Yeah.
And
screen capture of the video
probably
is
not
getting a little
probably
ugly.
not the best. Not what I recommend for sure.
For anyone who's an entrepreneur and they're thinking about video blogging or a personal brand, really even branding their products, what would be one or two of the key principles you need to make sure you think about this?
Your brand is about your audience. Figure out who your audience is and what they want from you. Second principle would be, don't just stop at a logo. Think about your entire experience.
That probably leads to some obvious answers to this, but I would love for people to hear, where do people get hung up? As you as a designer, when do you step back and just think in the back of your head, you are self-destructing your brand during this process? You as the designer, when does that happen for us as the entrepreneur or the business owner or the product owner?
Typically it happens when you start thinking about the minute details like colors, fonts. It's those small things like, I don't like that color, completely based off my own opinion. And it's the role of the designer is to go, okay, I have this wealth of knowledge on color palettes, fonts, and everything. And based off what you've told me, this is the direction I think you should go. If the direction is not right, that's one thing. But if you just really hate the curve of a font, that's where it gets really difficult for your designer friends to go, but it fits the direction so well. It's your audience. I know audience groups like this will reach this type of feeling with this type of font. At some point, allowing your designer to do his job. That's the big thing is, and if they just do a terrible job, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, we're not talking about crappy designers.
Get a second opinion, see what another designer might say, and kind of especially if you're not going to actually hire somebody to do it.
Yeah.
And then get another opinion if somebody else might have a really good insight that your designer friend missed. But it's minute details that most people get hung up on.
So if you're going to phone a friend, you're not going to pay them a lot of money or anything. If you micromanage them, you're an idiot. Pretty much. Well,
and if you're phoning a friend, then really the idea is you can either take my suggestion or don't take it. Yeah. But don't ask my opinion and then completely bash it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So entrepreneurs, what they say they know is this piece of iterative, just get it out there and see how people respond. Yeah. Can we handle branding the same way? You
can. The great thing about a brand is it can change. And nobody's gonna die because the brand doesn't change. Here's the biggest thing I like to tell people is Nike. The original logo, the CEO looked at and said, I don't like it, but I think I can own it. And it's now the most recognized brand. And no other shoe company has been able to capture the same magic that Nike has. And it was because the decision maker was able to say, I can own this brand and I can make it excellent.
That's huge. The most powerful ingredient is ownership. Liking it is kind of secondary.
Yeah, I mean, you should like it. You should like it a little bit.
But you got to be able to own it.
You got to be able to own it. Yeah.
It's not about what you like, it's what you can own.
Right.
I showed Joey the first round of the brand. I wanted to get his feedback, just really get his opinion.
Yeah.
What's your feedback?
I would say that right now it feels a little incomplete. There's some missing holes. There's some very specific things that a designer would look at and say, okay, and this needs to be tightened up a little bit. There were variations to your name, the full name, Brian J. Noel, and then there's also the initials BJN. I'm wondering if there's two separate treatments for that, right? I'm wondering if there is more you can do with your name, because the way that you treated it is fine, and it would work. But is there more you can do with it? Is there more interaction with the photo you can have with it. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Can you create a little bit more depth? Because right now it feels very flat. The photography probably can be taken differently.
Yeah.
And I would say that
I think it was my iPhone by myself in the room.
step number 1, no iPhone photos. From there, it's how can you incorporate that into this whole aspect of it. Obviously, if you're going to use black and white photography and then maybe add color to it later on somehow, then how does that work with the video blog, right? Is there a way to incorporate some of that into it, right? The font that you're using, I think, is fine. There might be a better option out there.
Yeah.
So that might have some exploration to it. The color palette, you had 2 that you sent me. The brighter, more lime green one, I think that's going to work better for what you're going for. But really it comes down to, is that color gonna draw to the audience? Are they gonna like that? And how are you gonna use that color elsewhere besides just as a shadow for your font? Those are my first thoughts as I look at it. I would say all around this is a good start, but I think you're not quite there yet. There's still a little bit you could do with the photography, with the color, and with the font.
Nice. Yeah, babe?
I didn't know y'all were recording.
Yeah. You want to come in here and say hey?
No.
Yeah, come here.
Hi.
Come where?
And it's right here.
No, I don't have any lipstick on. So I look like I have no mouth, which is super attractive. I'm leaving.
All right, have fun.
Peace out. See you later.
So, what you're saying is it's a great start, but I've got a little bit more work to do.